Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ryan Lofthouse. How long ago did you think, I quite fancy that music management lark?
I had an uncle, he was obsessed with Factory Records and Tony Wilson, so he used to tell me all these amazing stories, which you should definitely go and check out, because it's an incredible story, the story of Factory Records. And he said, the industry's not going to come to you, you've got to kind of put yourself out there and get on with it yourself. And so I was a student, the people were starting up and putting shows on themselves, so I decided to start putting my own shows on, which started out in this little venue that held 50 people, and then we grew it to 200 people, then we grew it to 1,000 people, and then we took over the university on Friday nights. And because the Futures in Maxwell Park were taking off so much, A&R people always think there's got to be a third one, and so they all run to Newcastle to go and check out, you know, what the next band is. And if you're the guy who's like 19, 20 and you're putting shows on, they want to talk to you because you're the person that is more tapped into the local scene than anyone else. Because of all that, because I was meeting people and I was giving tips to people all the time, I got offered a northern scouting role that don't really exist anymore, regional scouts.
Was that for a record company?
For Virgin. I got offered a job at Independiente, which was an independent record label, which at the time was Travis and Paul Weller and Embrace. And then I was introduced to a guy called David Boyd, who was my boss, and he introduced me to Paul McDonald. I became Paul's scout. Then I found James Bay and I found George Ezra, and I started managing them and got them record deals, and I bought into and then me and Paul just went off and started our own thing, and now it's half my company.
How do you go out and look for artists?
There's so much out there that you can't be across everything, so you have to try and find as many filter systems for yourself as you people that you trust, that you know that are willing to, you know, that in turn will trust you to give you tips on things, because they think, oh, you know, you're a good guy, or you know what you're talking about, or you know what you're doing, or I think you could help me take this to the next level, and so on.
How much is it raw talent, a great voice? How much is it songwriting ability? How much is it the right attitude? How much is it that they've already got something going themselves?
It's all of those things. I mean, George and James were both at BIMM when I found them. George was in Bristol and James was here. They were both just incredibly likable, but also you could tell that they were going to have a strong work ethic. They were smart enough to know that they didn't know everything. Like, you know, I need help, so help, you know, and you could, and I speak to them every single day, and it's a totally collaborative process.
When are they ready? When would you say, okay, is it again, okay, you've sold out a gig in Brighton, or is it you've got a song that people are going, do you know what, that could get on the radio?
We're Wendy Law here and John Harper in Bristol, who would just, you know, be a bit of a filter, and they would send me stuff through every now and again. And say, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? What do you think about this? And then John sent me George and just said, like, look, this is really, really early days, but just listen to this. And there was this voice, and I had no idea, because it was just an MP3, so I had no idea that he was just like, you know, 6'3", blonde, 18-year-old kid. You know, and this voice just came out, and I got on a train to Bristol that afternoon, and I just told John to bring him to a pub and said, like, I'm going to be in Bristol at 4 o'clock, make sure he's in this pub, I'm going to manage this. First and foremost, it's the records and it's the music, and that's what gets us out of bed in the morning and wanting to work with people that are ambitious. If you have a great song, it will cut through, and I totally believe that.
Do you look for something specific in artists that you find, and if so, what is it?
A good voice and a really good attitude are the two things that are so important, and that's non-genre specific.
Everyone's been speaking about networking. Is there any strategy to it, or is there any sort of right way to network?
Putting gigs on is the best way to do it, because you meet the guy who runs the venue, you meet, you know, you're the promoter, you meet, you're talking to 3 or 4 bands a month. Let's say your show is monthly, and so you start and then you start hanging out with the bands, and eventually one of those bands is going to be good enough that they'll introduce you to other people, and so on and so on and so on. And there you go.
I can add to that the great thing about being here in Brighton, I would say almost over virtually any other city in the UK, is that Brighton has a pre-existing music industry infrastructure. There are labels, publishers, press officers, agents, promoters, managers. Every job you can think of, there are lots of people already in this city doing that. So you can go and intern for them, talk to them, take them out for a beer, bump into them at a gig, talk to somebody who knows somebody. There are people at BIMM whose jobs are specifically to help you do that. And on that positive note, I shall thank Ryan very much indeed.